Welcome to the Transformation Moʻolelo, Mele Hana Noʻeau series. Session 4 will focus on the Hawaiian cultural practice of making Lei Poʻo, or the flower lei. The presenters are Hōkūlani Holt, Liana Horovitz, and Leni English. Hawaiian culture can incorporate physical, intellectual, spiritual, and emotional well-being through skillful work. Hawaiian cultural practice transforms through discovery. Thank you, Hōkūlani Holt, for starting us off with the Moʻolelo and Mele aspect.
Aloha mai kākou, welcome. I hope as you prepared for this presentation today, you had a chance to get out into our environment. I know all of us have been having a very rainy environment over these last few days, but hopefully that you have been able to get out into our environment, see how plants grow, where they grow, and when to best collect them. So today we're going to, and I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Hang on. Okay. Everybody see my screen? Yes? Okay, good. All righty. So today we're going to be having transformation through Moʻolelo, Mele, and Hana Noʻeau. And, you know, while it was described as being for a Lei Poʻo, if any of us know anything about making any kind of Hana Noʻeau, 1 hour is not enough. So what we will do today is introduce you to how you can get started. This is being recorded, so when the recording is shared, you can go back and forward and review and try again until you have a lovely Lei Poʻo. A joint resolution passed by the territory of Hawaii in 1923 named the Pua Aloalo, or hibiscus, as the flower emblem of the state. This same resolution also named local flowers that have been previously adopted for several of the island emblems. In 1999, House Bill 750 officially designated the island colors, flowers, and official symbols for each island. Most of us probably grew up with these very same colors and symbols, but it wasn't until 1999 that it was made official. Though the lei in itself holds powerful meaning and tradition, Lei Day only began in 1927. On May 1st, Lei Day in Hawaii, and was invented by writer and poet Don Blanding, who wrote an article in the local newspaper suggesting that a holiday be created around the Hawaiian custom of making and wearing lei. His co-worker, Grace Tower Warren, decided Lei Day should be observed on May Day, May 1st, and popularized the phrase, May Day is Lei Day in Hawaii. The first Lei Day was held on May 1st, 1928, and everyone in Honolulu was encouraged to wear lei, and festivities were held downtown with hula, music, lei making demonstration, and exhibits and contests. Much of this still continues throughout Hawaii. As we look at the pictures, we see the lei for these flowers and symbols for each island. Up here in the left corner, the Ohia Lehua, the Lei Lokelani, the Hina Hina, the Lei Hina Hina, This is Moki Hana. Oh, see, I always move too fast and then come all jam up. The kukui, kaunaoa, and I put this here on the bottom so that you can see it's not grown into this kind of shape. It is grown like long tendrils and mixed up with the other plants down by the ocean and then made into leis such as the one you see above. And of course, Lei Ilima for Oahu, and the jewel of our Pacific, the Lei Poʻo. Hina ulu ohia. Hina ulu ohia, Hina that grows the ohia tree, is the goddess of the growing ohia lehua forest and of rain. In the story, she appears as the mother of Kaulu, the voyager, and wife of Ku Kaʻohia Laka, a god of the ohia forest, as well as rain. To both Hina ulu ohia and Ku Kaʻohia Laka, the flowering ohia lehua is sacred. No one venturing into the forest or to visit the volcano would break leaves, flowers, or branches while going there. Only when leaving with the proper chants can flowers and materials be gathered. A rainstorm engulfing the gatherer may be one of the results of gathering ohia lehua without proper ceremony. I wrote this mele in 2004 for the Hula o na Keiki hula competition held at the Ka'anapali Beach Hotel. It is in response to a huge rainstorm that fell on Maui that I was caught in. I was on my way back from Lahaina to Wailuku, and the pali was closed because waterfalls and rocks were falling onto the road. We waited on the Lahaina side near Papalawa Beach for what seemed like hours. When we were finally able to drive through, the power and yes, even beauty of the clouds, rain, and gushing water was awe-inspiring. And this mele was born. Just last year, Liz Morales wrote the lilting melody and Kapilina recorded it. These last few days also reminded me of this mele. Enjoy. So this is what happened this past week. Mahalo nui for enjoying this little mele with us and learning a little bit about Hina Ulu Ohia, that perhaps someone went into the great forest and did not do the proper chants and protocols to gather lehua, and thus the big storm of Hina Ulu Ohia joined us once again. Mahalo nui. I'd like to turn the time over to Meleka and to Liana. Okay,
All right. Okay. Unmute myself. Okay.
go right ahead.
Aloha mai.
Aloha.
Welcome. Thank you, Hoku. I always love learning from, she's my kumuhula, and just very privileged to always be learning from her. So welcome to everyone who are joining us. And we're guessing all of you have already went out and gathered some flowers or foliage to work with. And in the interest of getting through a completed something, we're going to be working on kupe'e. Kupe'e is typically something a little smaller. In this case, it would be something, I just worked on this, so I think you guys all can finish today in the time that we have. So the kupe'e will go around your wrist. I might keep going, and then it might be a Lei Poʻo at the end, but I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Liana, who will give some of the instructions now.
Aloha mai kākou. What I have here is prepped already the raffia to wrap and to vili the lei. And there are many different ways to go about this. There's many different schools of thought about how to make a lei. So this is just one. I've braided a long braid of raffia that I lay inside a small strip of a banana bark. And for a Lei Poʻo, it's nice to have something up against your forehead that's soft. So that's one of the reasons to think about the banana, as well as it is biodegradable, so that you don't have to worry about, oh, is this a plastic ribbon or something that I'm using. So, and again, there's many different ways to go about it. Some people will just use raffia as their backing. So I've tied this raffia onto the tip of my banana, and to start with, I'll grab one small bundle to put up at the base, and I'm going to lay everything neatly inside the banana, and then I wrap it. And a couple of things to think about in the wrapping. So I'm left-handed, so I use my left hand to grab, and I'm using my right hand to hold and secure the materials. And I noticed that Meleka is doing it opposite than I am, so I'm assuming that you're right-handed. Start at the very end And you want to measure, if you're going to do a kupe'e for your wrist, if you're going to do a longer lei for a po'o for your head, you want it to be exact. You don't want it to be a gap in the back where the lei isn't going to meet and finish itself completely. So that's one thing to think about. And the reason I like using a braided raffia is with 6 inches on each end, it makes a beautiful tie. I don't have to think about how else I'm going to tie this together. And it also reinforces the banana backing so that if for some reason you have a weak backing, you still have something in place to hold it. So if I've wrapped once and I've got 4 different types of foliage that I'm using, I've got the a'ali'i, I'm then going to use the kulu'i, and again, I'm going to wrap once, secure it, and hold it together, and then choose my next foliage. Now, something to think about is, and this just takes time and practice, is the back side, as few gaps as possible is what's desired so that it keeps everything held in place and that it's tight. So what that means is if you're doing a wrap and you say, oh, I didn't get that quite tight, I'm just going to wrap it again. That's not a great idea, because then when your raffia dries, it will expand and you might lose your hold on your foliage. So my third piece that I'm going to add in there is ule. And so I'm adding it and I'm holding it tight and I'm adding it tightly as I wrap a piece so that there won't be any gaps between each piece of foliage. So closer to me like this. Yeah. Okay. And then I might add in a couple of pieces of fern. This is a fern. And then I'll do another wrap. Maleka, do you have other thoughts about when your strategies for making your lei?
You know, like Hoku had talked about, is when you're gathering, you know, you want your what you're gathering to have good mana, right? So you don't want to be sneaking around and like taking it, because then you're not gonna have good mana in your foliage. So be sure to ask permission. These are also things, or use what you have in your within reach. So if you guys see, I have a bougainvillea, because there's just tons of this all over the place that I use. And then gathering, make sure you ask permission, because you want your stuff to have good kind, like my kumu would say, juju, because this is what you're going to be adorning, or you want to, you know, if you're going to share it with somebody, you want your stuff to have good juju. So in the same regard, have good thoughts, to feel good, because that's the kind of mana you wanna give to your lei. Preparation of flowers are really important. It kind of helps when your flowers are prepared in similar size. Then when you're doing what Liana is, it's all ready and you may want to adjust it. I will say that what you folks are doing, if you're doing a kupe'e, if you're going to stop at the kupe'e, is actually, although shorter, is a higher, it requires higher skill, because the tendency is to put globs of bunches of flowers, then you end up having like large lei.
Like this.
Also be mindful that if it's a lei haku for your po'o, okay, right. This is another, there's another step in this process, which is that you add another piece on the inside so that it's hiding all the raffia, and it has a smooth trying to look at how people can see this face. It has a smooth interior. So this is another thing you can consider doing. I don't know if some of you have ever received a Lei Poʻo, that it's so big and so heavy that it's hard to wear. So those are some things to think about, is that, you know, you don't want it to be so heavy that it's hard to hold on your head, because you're not ma'a to having heavy things on your head, and then you have headache after a while. So just some things to think about. Hui! Were you the gatherer up there? Sorry, I just saw somebody come into the picture. And don't be afraid, or don't be ashamed, or to talk to your flowers. You know, if it looks like it's going way to the right or way to the left, tell your flowers, your pua, okay, we gotta move you to the right or move you to the left. I do that all the time, because that's kind of the mana I want, that to go into my lei haku lei.
My lei will never stay together if I'm in a bad state of mind. When I'm in a bad frame of mind, if I'm feeling frustrated, anxious, guaranteed my lei is not going to make it. So, and at the same time, it's one of the most meditative practices that can help put me in a better state of mind. So there's kind of a fine balance there. But make sure you have time, that you set aside time for yourself. Like anything that's worth doing, it takes time and it takes patience. I always have a clothespin nearby, so that if I need to stop and take a break, I'm not going to lose anything in the process. And having a squirt bottle around is also a nice idea, so that you can mist your foliage as you're going and keep it fresh looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see everybody's really on it and working on their concentrating. Don't forget to smile and enjoy.
And it's always fun if you have somebody to make a lei with. It's a very social experience. A couple of other tips is that it's nice when you're preparing your materials, that you have a little bit of a stem, so that it's your stem that is going to be wrapped, and not so much lots of leaf material, because then that's something that makes your band get a little bit bigger and harder to manage. So keeping a thin stem as something that you're wrapping, and not a lot of extra. You can peel it off as you go if you need to.
We were just talking about how when you have the good kind of supplies, like your flowers, like I was so lucky to see this very bright a'ali'i smiling at me. It was in the wild, so I did ask still for permission. But when you have beautiful foliage to work with, it really helps. But it also means you gotta have good, see, this is not good right here. And I'm really thinking, like, why am I using this very thin raffia, as opposed to, if you see Liana has the more thicker one. Yes, you want to not be using this. I'm like, why am I doing this? So thicker raffia is a lot easier to work with. It holds things in place better. We're not gonna do this to you folks today, but in the past, you would have to like whip your lei,
Make sure
kaboom,
it's all hold together.
and if it didn't break, then you were my ka'i. We're all learning, so we're not gonna be whipping any leis today. So I'm gonna end using this raffia.
You want me to make some music for a little bit?
Sure.
One other thing might be useful to show is how to add raffia if you come to the end of the line and you get stuck. So I'm going to actually cut off the base of this because the raffia that I have right here is a little too hard to wrap. I got the end of it, so it's a little bit on the thick side. Look if I could use one of
Sure.
yours. So, and again, there's different strategy. Everybody has a different strategy, but I'll show you what tends to work
Trying to
for
find you a
me.
good one.
And then you can make the thing as you want.
Are you looking for thick or thin?
That's a pretty.
So when you start at the beginning, Napua is just asking, you just wrap it or you make a knot at the beginning?
I made a knot at the beginning of mine, at the very top, to hold it in place, and then the tail of that knot, I just tucked into the inner side of the banana. Similar strategy, what I'm going to show you for adding on. So let's see.
Gosh.
So again, people have different strategies, but this is my strategy. I put one in the back so that it's going to sort of be added to this, and the tail I'll wrap once, and then I just hold it on, and again I just put it right into my little fold here. So then these become secured together. The tail is in with the braid, and I'll add one more piece. And then it should add in pretty securely, just like that. So seamless and secure. Don't knot it together. That's if you have two pieces and you try to knot it together, what will happen is it will slip apart really easily. So don't knot two pieces together.
I not to add any more to you folks, but I'm going to introduce another very good material. My mom is a lei maker. I'm not so much a lei maker, but have had the opportunity to make lei just like all of you folks. My mom is the kind of lei maker that her yard is full of flowers for lei making. And my dad would always say, you cannot eat that, but she managed. So she has this material that she uses, which is biodegradable, which is the reason why we use raffia. Because when we pow with our lei, we wanted to be able to we want to be able to give it back to the aina if we want to, or if that's an option. And we don't want to have opala left. So the raffia, as with this material that my mom likes to use, as you guys can see, it's really thick and it comes on a roll and it's biodegradable. So I'm gonna introduce this to my lei.
And can you get that at Ben Franklin or somewhere else?
Yeah, similar to raffia. In fact, it's called paper raffia.
Leni, you can put a little bit closer to the camera.
This.
Yeah.
It comes
Okay.
in spool.
Just so I know what to look for. Mahalo.
And typical of my mom, she'll have spools and spools of this. So she didn't mind me taking the one that was almost pow. We wanted to talk about, and keep doing what you folks doing. Don't let us interrupt.
It's a social.
Yes. But you know, if you have something you want to share about your lei and what you're doing, we're all ears. If we were doing this in person, we'd all be enjoying each other's company. So
Talking about children.
yeah.
What you did last
Or our
night.
students.
Or
and
students.
jobs.
Right.
Or grumbling about your husband.
All of the above.
I was just sharing, and I see Moani over there. That the time that I did a lot of lei is when we did Poʻo. Whew,
Big ones.
that's all kind of hakule that you're making for your cowboy hat, for your neck. There's 6 people in the group, and then Moani was like, right. And then you have the big horse lace.
Which is a whole different thing.
Right, which is a huge production. So if that means anything, that's the closest I get to qualifying myself as a kanale maker. But you know, with everything else, the more you do, the more you get ma'a, the more you find things that work good for you or things you will do differently. That is very beautiful. So beautiful.
So my I always tend to have my lei be too big and too fat, and that's my learning curve is how to keep it really narrow and thin along the banana and not have it get too wide. So I'm always happy if I can have a thinner lei than a thicker lei, and usually my lei are really fat.
My experience with that is to start small. I know for me, I have a tendency of wanting to, you know, have these bigger clusters of flowers, but starting with smaller clusters of flowers. So what kind of material everybody using?
I don't have banana, so I use dry tea leaf and I take out the midrib and I use one end and I grate it.
Yeah.
And then I use the brown tea leaf down here.
Yeah.
And I'll add this way and grate at the end. But in my yard, I have Hōkūlani.
Ooh.
And you know how in the hospital people buy you little plants?
Yes.
So I had planted the little rose one and it's going off, but it's all just buds. I don't know if you can see it. Do you see that pink rose?
Pretty.
It's just a pink. It never opens. It's always just a bud.
Pretty.
And so this is from UHMC by where I parked my car when I was at work yesterday. And the Hōkūlani is from my house, and kupu kupu, and the panics. When I saw the video, I saw panics. So I was like, oh yeah, I have that too. So I threw that in, and I just picked it a little while ago, and I soaked my tea leaves to make it soft for my backing. And that's what I did.
And I can smell that lei. Exactly.
Mahalo for this time away to do this kind of lovely stuff. Mahalo.
Yes.
Mahalo for sharing.
Well, the other thing I notice is that when I'm looking for lei material, I'm so much more aware of what's around, and I just noticed there's a beautiful pink bougainvillea hedge right in front of our college that I didn't tune into before, and so now when you're looking to make lei, then you're like, oh, that's where I might look next time together.
Right.
So when you have your 4 little pieces, then you're gonna, just one time you're gonna wrap around? You said 1 or 2 times?
No, just once, because if you're trying to compensate because you're like, oh, there's a gap in the back of my lei, and oh, it doesn't look secure. I'm going to wrap it again. What will happen is that you'll lose the raffia against the banana or whatever your backing is, which holds it in place. And if your raffia, I like to use wet raffia when I'm wrapping because it's a little bit easier to maneuver. But when it dries, it will expand a little bit. And if there's extra wraps, it's more likely that you're going to lose your foliage, that it's going to fall out of the backing. So it's better to unwrap and to do it again than to try to compensate and double wrap, if that makes sense.
Liana, can you show your back on the camera, please?
Yes. So here's, and maybe I can show the backing of the inside, which is different from Auntie Hoku's lei, from the inside of maybe that's a useful comparison for the inside of this particular lei. So the thicker the raffia, the easier it is to keep your backing smooth as well. You don't have as many gaps, I think.
So for most of us, we are making what is referred to as lei haku. And what makes it a lei haku, and chime in, right, is that we are using multiple items in the lei. So like this has bougainvillea and leather leaf. So it's a haku because we have we're using multiple types of, more than one type of flower or material. This one here is all a'ali'i, just different colors of a'ali'i. And so when we are using one item, I believe it's called
the vili, because it's the methodology for making the lei. So the wrapping of the lei is how we refer to it. So the vili style. And if you're viliing more than one type of foliage together, then it's called the haku.
Right. And when we vili one item, so we just kind of had a review with our kumu earlier, well, my kumu. And so there's the difference between the type, well, the technique versus the type.
Yes. The methodology for the wrapping versus the materials that you have in it.
Right. So the other techniques that some of you may be aware of is the braiding. When you're adding la'i, or you're just using la'i and you're braiding it in, or palai or palapalai ferns, when you're braiding it in, that is called hili. This is called vili because we're vili. This is the act of vili when we're using oh, okay. The other one was the hipu'u. So I'm not sure if some of you are familiar when you tie it, like
tying the stems together,
right,
with like a kukui.
So that's that is referred to as the hipu'u style. Did we cover it all? Kui. That's the one a lot of people are very familiar with. The kui, Lei Plumeria, Melia. This is another kui. So it was just with the needle and the thread. Just, this is the back of the Just to like, but you know how kui is with the plumeria. That's the
With a needle and thread
Yes.
sewing, regular, kind of more traditional sewing style.
right. So how's everybody doing? You got your first kupe'e almost? Very nice, Napua.
And then we get carried away and we forgot the pattern.
That's why, yeah, sometimes lesser is better.
Less is more.
Less is more. Easier to work with when, well, this is red, green, so. No? No?
Mhm.
No?
Okay, come on, ask me.
No? No?
How's it look on bouquet?
She wanted to know why is her so bushy.
You wanted to know.
We wanted to know.
I ask myself that all the time.
Probably you want to take smaller pieces, smaller.
Use the whole tree.
Yeah. That's very common to, use bigger bunches to place.
Yeah,
Well, we just use that
that's
4-inch, the 4-inch you said in the instructions, we measured that 4-inch.
So there's a difference between like 4 inches of this and 4 inches of this, right? So if I'm using, I don't know if it's better to show it on the big screen or under this, but this will make a much wider bunchier lei than say a small little piece. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I didn't think it doesn't look good.
Size that you're using can determine how wide your lei will be also.
This is Hoku. I want to tell a story.
Hey.
Okay. So no, this is not a deep story. This is just a story. So I teach in Halau. All my students learn how to make different kinds of lei. So before, when I had more male dancers, one of my dancers was a bartender down in Wailea. So he would make just kind of short pieces that can be used in the hair, vili style, a bunch of them, and give them to the waitresses in his bar so that they could wear it in their hair. And then he would continue to have an opportunity to practice making the lei, because he would not wear it in his hair, but he'd make a bunch to practice how to use different materials, how to get the hand working, and make short pieces that they can use in their hair. And he'd take them to work and pass them out to the girls. Of course, he was the most favorite bartender in the whole hotel, so that he could keep his hand improving in his lei making. So why I'm saying this is that, yes, Lei Poʻo are beautiful and always appropriate to wear, but you can still, and maybe it might seem like so overwhelming to make a Lei Poʻo all the time, but maybe you might want to do short 6-inch, 4-inch pieces to wear around a bun, or to wear around a ponytail, or to wear on the side of your head, so that you can continue to improve your hand skill and the opportunity to use different materials.
Definitely along those lines, you know, training or getting ma'a or used to what kind of hands to use with the different types of materials. So some of you may have already experienced that you're trying to make sure your flour or what you're adding stays in place, so you tie real tight, and then your raffia, if you had the kind I had, broke. Then you don't want to get so frustrated, but that does happen. And so you learn how to be tight enough, but not too tight that it breaks.
Practice, lots of practice.
Yep. Yeah.
But if you feel like it's getting too fat and too wide, it's better to unwrap and start again. And go back to the place in your lei where you felt like, okay, that's what I wanted it to look like, rather than trying to sort of compensate again.
Yeah. I also wanted to mahalo, you know, Kahikino Kala has a really awesome place over here, and they have some really technical people who I so appreciate.
I know it's amazing these days how we can figure out to do this virtually in different places and yet still be together.
Right. So we're coming close to, believe it or not, it seems so quickly, our time together, and wanted to take a moment to hear how everybody doing. Any questions? We'd love to see how your lei is going.
You know what might be helpful is, which took me forever to learn, was how to end it nicely.
Ah, right.
Yeah. So you get everything covered nicely and closed nicely.
That is actually something we should try to cover.
Did you? Oh, you kept going on the puke'e one, so you're making.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. Okay, I'll do one. Oh, I need to
Very
add
helpful.
another. But here, I'll use this as just sort of a way to, and let's see, maybe I'll unwrap for a minute and a couple of different things. So if you have a tail already because you have the braid and you don't have to worry about making something to tie at the end, I just do a little slip knot. So you see that I just slip the, just make a little slip knot, and then it's tight, and then I could make one more around the end, and that is pretty secure there. If I were going to end it right there and tie it. If you make like a huge knot, then it's going to be maybe a little bit harder to put your two end pieces together. If I were going to make this as a pe'e. Like that.
Show the
You want to show another
Yes.
methodology?
You can take it off.
Yeah. So this one is I need my glasses. Going to undo this. Oh, nice.
So while she's undoing that one, I can just show that because I had two ends, when I finished my Lei Poʻo, and I put the two ends together and I just made a little bow and secured it just that way.
Right. So you know when you're sizing it, it's one thing when you if it's for you and you can size yourself, but I tend to go a little bit larger if it's not for me, because easier to make it smaller, cannot make it bigger. But if you can see when you put it together, you're just gonna overlap it and use these additional to tie it. I do this wrap around with raffia to close it, and then it has a little bit closure on it. Because there's, for me, that stick, yeah, there's a stick, the bunch of sticks, branches at the end.
That's probably the trickiest part, how to end it as beautifully as you started.
So I've done different kinds of braiding at the end so that I like to cover it. Because at the end you'll have those
Ends.
branches, yeah.
So you can just cut off the if you have little pieces that are sticking out at the end, you could just trim them off so that they're not poking your head if you're wearing it as a lei poʻo.
Okie dokie. I so really appreciate this kind of opportunity to do things that is so about who we are, helps to define us as people of Hawaii, and the college we're learning, right?
Helps to de-stress.
Yes.
Use the other side of our brains sometimes. That I think is really important. Have balance. Connects us with our environment, makes us more aware of what's around us.
I have a question.
Yes.
How do you care for these after you're done?
Good question. The question was about how do you care for your lei when it's done? Of course, because you know you have good mana in it, so you, in the same way, you want to take care of the mana that went into the lei. So most times for me, the flowers that I'm using will preserve better in the refrigerator. I think Hōkūlani is probably one of the few that doesn't. So I will put this on here for now, but I'll wrap it and I keep it in an airtight container. Actually, I'll kind of give it a spruce of water, just very light. You don't want to like dunk it in water. Spray it, and then it's usually not in these big containers, but a smaller container that it will fit nicely. I'll Also important is knowing your refrigerator, because so many times I've had my refrigerator freeze my foliage, which is sad because they go to sleep. So you have any other thoughts?
Well, usually if I'm making lei and I know I'm not going to be using it right away, I have to make it a few days in advance. A technique that was shared with me is to dip it very quickly in a tub of water that has a splash of bleach, and that helps to perk up the flowers and leaves and helps it to last a little bit longer. But not a soak, not a dunk, just a quick little dip. And then I usually try, if I can, rather than securing the lei at the end, if I'm going to not use it or wear it or give it right away, try to leave it open, and I would wrap it in some newspaper before I would put it in a plastic bag or a plastic container to put in the refrigerator, depending on how much space I have. If I don't have enough space for a nice Tupperware, wrapped in newspaper and then in a plastic bag, usually protects the flowers so they don't get waterlogged. The newspaper will sort of absorb that, and then it's not. But if I don't have to, if I have the space to lay it flat instead of tying it off at the end, it just kind of preserves it a little bit, its shape a little bit longer.
So a good reason to go and swipe the newspaper. Yeah, I mean, how many of us still read newspaper? Maybe not too many, right? So save your newspaper. Sometimes in a pinch, if you don't have newspaper, you can use paper bag. You can open it up flat. And then the same thing, you wet it a little bit and then you can wrap your lei in it. But newspaper is definitely the best. It's the right kind of thinness, and it helps to not let your lei get too soaking wet, and then therefore it begins to rot in the refrigerator. And thus, with what Maleka was saying, you will get to know your refrigerator, because you don't want to store it wherever the freezer part of your refrigerator is. If you have a freezer on top, store it below. If you have a freezer below, store it on top. If you have the freezer on the side, store it opposite on the other side. Do not let it touch up against the side that has the freezer, because then it's going to freezer burn, like you have your meat or your chicken, going to freezer burn your lei, and that's not a good thing either. But sometimes in a pinch, you can use a paper bag, but the thickness between the two, the paper bag and the newspaper. So you want to kind of get the paper bag a little softer so that it will mold around your lei.
But not the kind of mold that you don't want in the refrigerator.
Yeah, not the black mold, but the form around your lei.
This is the first time that I'm using the banana. And I really like it because, on the hand, as you're holding it, it's so much softer than, just the raffia. I notice it's really easier on the maker. It's really good. Thanks, Liana, for that. Maybe we can go around and everybody can just show what they have so far.
Lift it up to your camera.
Sweet. Nice. That's really nice. Wow, you guys did a lot.
Oh, nice.
Wow, colorful.
Monica, what is your materials?
Well, I was so lucky. I was able to gather with Liana yesterday. I wish I could tell you the names. But we also have mamaki. She pointed out mamaki in my yard or our yard, and then the pele hair. And then
So I think we got some a'ali'i yesterday, and we got the kulu'i yesterday, and I think we might have even picked some alahe'e yesterday as a kind of a hardier leaf to try to put into the lei.
So even though you might think that the lei is too bushy or too full, you know, it definitely works super well as a lei for a hat. Yeah, it works super well for a lei for a hat. So even though you might think, oh, it's too big for my head, if you put your hat on, kind of like what Meleka did, it always looks lovely.
Yes.
Can you also tell us, does the a'ali'i dry well with the fern?
It does, and we have a beautiful example here from Meleka's hat.
Can we see?
So this is what it'll look like when it dries. And Lei gave me, I mean, it's if I shake it, you can see it'll, so I don't shake it, but she gave me a really good idea. I'm going to take this out in my yard and watch the a'ali'i grow. Because the seeds, right? It's a great idea.
The seeds are in the pods, yeah. So
Yeah.
if you put it outside in a place, it can germinate.
Mm-hmm. Great idea.
that was I was wondering, if I put this in water, would it grow eventually or not?
Good try.
I guess, huh?
So if you open up the flower pod for
Leni, no te van a ver.
if you open this up, you can see the seeds inside. They're small and brown, and you can plant those. You could put those in. You could put that into some soil and grow plants from the seeds. I've done that before. It takes a little while, but it's doable. So these are really pods, is what we're looking at. The beautiful color of their foliage there. It might be, well, I know that we're just after 4. And hopefully there's enough instruction and you'll have the video so that you can go back and look again if you have questions, or give us a call. We're happy to pick up a phone and talk.
Nice, Nakua.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today. I will be sending out the recording to all of you, and we look forward to our next in our series. We're still working on it. So please join us when you see it, and join us for other professional development events. And again, thank you, Hōkūlani. Thank you so much, Liana and Meleka. You know, thank you so much. We really learned a lot by your sharing.
So fun. Thank you for having us here. What a wonderful way to spend the afternoon.
Right. Take care. Aloha. Oh,
Mahalo.